Next, let's review our form triggers. We're going to go ahead and navigate to form triggers underneath automation. From here, we're going to start with two areas. We can either click on trigger options to review the triggers that are already built out within your system. You can also select sort triggers to get an overview list of the triggers that are already built out. We'll go ahead and take a look at sort triggers first, as that's a quick way to kind of get familiar with what's being built, what's already built out. If I click on sort triggers, here what I want you to take notice is that we've got agent submitted and internally approved. Agent submitted is when that person who's filling out that intake form is finished filling it out and they submit it to open to close. Here we can see everything that's green, every trigger that's green is going to fire off first. So here we've got a collection of fields or field sections, possibly some templates that need to apply when that intake form is submitted by the agent. The other color that we have is this peachy color. It's called internally improved. So what this means that all of these triggers down here at the bottom, these are going to show up when we approve that intake form. So after your internal user has validated, made sure that the information's correct, make sure that they filed their documents, make sure that their contacts are correct, they approve that intake form, and now the extra set of task templates, document templates, even date template can apply to that transaction. What I usually like to suggest you guys looking through this is just taking a peek at what's already built out. So here we can see we've got two field triggers. They've got this little F, it says field. That's how we know it's a field trigger. Below that, we've got FS standing for field section trigger. Continuing to scroll down, we've got our T's. Those stand for templates. That could be task template, document template, commission template, one sheet template, or trigger template. So there's a couple different templates that we can apply to our property. When we talk about order and organizing our triggers, what we usually like to do is we like to have our fields fire off first, then our field sections, and then our templates for agent submitted. If you have other fields and field sections firing off on your internally approved, you'll want to make sure that that is organized here as well. So we'll want to do fields and field sections first at the top of our internally approved, and then all of our templates below. The final trigger being our date template. Let's go ahead and take a look at a little bit more into these template cards that we'll go ahead and say close. Here, if I scroll down, again, we're going to click on that trigger option to expand the view of these form triggers. The first one that we see is a field trigger. It's got that little acorn. What a field trigger brings on is individual fields. So if I click on that little field trigger here, you can see it shows us alarm code. We can also see alarm code here. If you need to bring on additional fields along with alarm code, we can click on this drop down, and this is going to show us the field section as well as the fields within them. And we can select one individual field that we want to bring on. Say we wanted to bring on client as a field. We'll say add, it'll bring that on, it'll add it to those trigger assets. If we wanted to remove a field, we're going to select that trash can icon, and it's going to remove that field from that trigger. If we continue to scroll down, we're going to see another set of triggers here. These ones are specifically for field sections. So what this one does right here is this brings on a whole group of field sections. You can click once again on where it says fields with this little cheese icon. Once we click on that here, we can see the field sections. If we click on where it says choose field, these are all of the field sections that I currently have in my account. So here you're going to see your field sections that are currently in your account. You can select the ones that you need to add to this list. If you need to remove one, you'll select that trash can icon. Continuing to scroll down, we're going to go down a bit further until we get to our templates. Here's an example of one that's a template. So it says template and it's got these two sticky notes. We're going to go ahead and click on template. Here we can see once again, here's our trigger assets. Here are those trigger assets. Next to the name of that trigger asset, so here we've got main buyer under contract email triggers, we can see the word trigger, document. You may also see the word task. If you need to add on more templates, you're just going to click where it says choose templates, and you can select either task templates, document templates, trigger templates, date template, commission template, or one sheet template to add to this particular form trigger. What I usually suggest when you're going through and reviewing these is take the time to look at the conditional logic that's used to add on these additional information. So for example, we've got this trigger form trigger right here. The way that this one works is that we can see here's the condition, right? Here's the condition that we have built out for this one. It says, will there be an inspection equal to yes? If there is, it brings on our inspection triggers. our inspection documents, and our inspection task template. If I continue to scroll down further, we're going to see a couple more. For example, here's one for HOA. Is there an HOA equal to yes? Then it brings on the tasks for HOA, and it brings on the documents for HOA. Let's go ahead and talk about how we create more triggers. You've gone through, you've reviewed them, they look good, you've added on what you need to add on, you've removed what you've needed to remove. Let's say you need to add on more triggers. Depending on how you want to build them out, you can either use the bottom of the trigger to clone and create another version of that trigger. So here you can see it says field, but if we wanted to create an email trigger, form trigger, we could, or a text, a template, field section, field. We can also clone this particular trigger if we needed to. To add in a brand new one, let's say we don't want to clone it from an existing one, we're going to select Add Trigger. Here we'll choose the action. Do we want it to be based off of form submitted, or do we want it based off of internally approved? And what is our trigger function? Do we want to send an email, send a text message, add or remove a template, add or remove a field section, or add or remove a field? You'll go ahead and select which one you want to do. We'll go ahead and say that we want to do our inspection field section. So I want my field sections to come on when they've been submitted by the agent. So I'll go ahead and say agent. And then for my trigger function, I'm going to say field section. Next, I'll select add. A right-hand view is going to pop up. This is going to be us selecting what field section we want to come on with this form trigger. We'll go ahead and click here, and I'm going to type in inspection. We'll go ahead and select inspection details and select add. Now we can see that inspection details is added on there. If I needed to bring on any other field sections, I can just click back onto this list, locate the other field sections that I need, and make sure to select add. We'll go ahead and close out of it for now. Now we have this trigger right here at the top. All new triggers created will be at the top if you use this add trigger functionality. We'll go ahead and click on trigger options to expand this trigger, and we'll go ahead and turn on this trigger. This trigger right now is turned off. It's grayed out. You can see the difference between the one below it. If it's on, it's got this little green button. If it's off, it's got this little white button. We'll go ahead and flip that switch on. What I like to do next is I like to grab the verbiage of that trigger asset. So I just like to highlight it and copy it. We'll click onto details and I'll say add and then paste that information in. When it goes from purple to gray, that means that it's saved. And the reason I like to add in these details is that when we're looking at our sort triggers, I want to be able to see the details of this trigger. Here's an example of a trigger that doesn't have details. It just says T template. I have no idea what this trigger does. It doesn't tell me whether or not it brings on anything or removes anything. It just says T template. That's an example of what it would look like if we didn't add in details. I'm going to go ahead and bring that back down. We'll say close. We're going to go ahead and click on our trigger options. And the next thing we need to do is we need to add on a condition. I'm going to go ahead and select add condition. Our conditional type is going to be either a property field, file role, or contact role. In this case, we're going to stick with property field. The property field that we want is, will there be an inspection? So very similar to how we built out our form conditions, we want that same condition to be used throughout our system. Will there be an inspection? We want to say if it's equal to yes, then we want this field section to come on. If you need to add on another condition, let's say we wanted to also add on a contact role or a file, I could select those and add them here. If I know that I'm done with my conditions, I can go ahead and say close. Now I have this condition here. Will there be an inspection equal to yes? If it is, it brings on this inspection details. We can either select add condition if we want to create another condition that needs to be met. I'll go ahead and say if the contact role, home inspector, exists in the property. And now we're saying that the home inspector must exist in the property, as well as will there be an inspection must be equal to yes. There might be scenarios where you might not have that home inspector when that person is filling out that intake form. So we might not want to use this as a condition, but I just wanted to show you the difference between us adding on additional conditions. If we wanted to create an or condition, so right now this is an and, it says if field, will there be an inspection equal to yes, and if contact role, home inspector exists on the property, then it's going to apply this particular trigger. If we wanted to create an or, let's say, will there be an inspection or we need a home inspector, we're going to go ahead and delete this contact role condition. And then we're going to actually click on where it says field. And what this is going to do is it's going to let us know we're creating a child condition. We're going to go ahead and follow the same rules that we did before. We'll go ahead and say that we want to do it based off of a contact role. We want to say the home inspector, and we can say that it must exist in the property and say add. I'll go ahead and close out of this screen. And now you can see the difference. So here it says, will there be an inspector equal to yes, or contact role home inspector exists in the property. I have another example of this, and it's when we talk about our dual contracts. So I just went ahead and just really quickly searched for dual. So I did Control F, Command F on my keyboard, typed in dual. Here's that trigger that's specifically for dual. So this one says if the field contract client type is equal to buyer, or if the field contract client type is equal to dual, then I want these particular trigger assets to apply. That's an example of how you can use those or and conditions. Just kind of depends on what you need.